Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 130 of the Laravel News Podcast. Make sure you stick around today. We have some excellent news regarding a brand new sponsorship course. Not actually what I meant to say, so I'm going to start that over. Scratch. Okay. Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 130 of the Laravel News Podcast. Make sure you stick around. We have some pretty cool news about a brand new course that is new to the community surrounding one of our very favorite first-class packages, Laravel Nova. We love the Laravel Nova, don't we?
We do.
It's the best.
Makes life so
We
much
also love
easier.
David Hemphill. It does. We love you, David, and all your keyboard goodness. Have you seen all the stuff he's been talking about recently with the keyboard stuff? He's gone keyboard crazy.
Crazy keys. There's all these keys and keycaps and 1,500 different boards that he's constructed. I think, look, if it wasn't for this pandemic, I think we'd all be on a plane and we'd have to stage an intervention because he's out of control.
Yeah, he is, but he's awesome. Yeah, he's got some, I don't know. He's got some really cool keyboards. I wish I had some of his keyboards. Who knows? Maybe he'll
the only keyboard you've managed to nerf. So.
I know, bork it up. Dude, I really did. Like, I've got an An Pro, and the only reason I bought it, like, I finally bought a mechanical keyboard because it was Bluetooth and I could get away with no wires and everything. Do you remember that whole debacle? You were like,
yes.
Dude, it's a mechanical, it sits on your desk, just plug the thing in,
not going
right?
Anywhere. Like, how often are you carrying around a 3-pound keyboard? Seriously.
Totally. Never happens. So anyway, I ignored all your warnings and advice and decided to go my own way and have been paying for it ever since. So
having said that, my Keychron K1, which is it's a 10 keyless one, which I'm still not used to after all these months. But
really, that's funny.
It is Bluetooth and it works quite well. I'm quite happy with
I remember him. Yeah, I remember you saying that you really enjoyed that keyboard. So, I haven't had a 10 key for quite a while, so it's not too big of a deal for me.
Yeah.
But I like the little keyboards. I use my Magic keyboard, my little Mac Magic keyboard one, because that was before they had the big ones, the big 10 key wireless ones.
Yeah.
Now they got those. So I remember when I first started switching over, it was very difficult too, because I was so used to that 10 key. It's so nice.
You just go but now it feels like it's not there.
Yeah, I remember Adam Wathen saying one time, he was like, what is wrong with you people who are like 10 keys? Like, what are you like, just moving your hand all over your desk all day? I don't know. He was very particular about it for a while there. Anyway, I digress, folks. I'm so sorry. We're going to jump into it here. Here we go. So we've got some releases, some news packages, no tutorials today, although I suppose some of our package stuff could be considered tutorials. We're just going to consider them packages today. So let's get right into it. Laravel 8.10. So the Laravel team released 8.10 this week with job chains within batches, database upserts, they're calling them, which is interesting, and the latest new features, fixes, and changes for the 8.x branch. So let's talk about job chains in batches. So batches is sort of this new thing that's been introduced in Laravel 8, which is really cool. One of the things I really enjoy about that is you actually have that built in Horizon. So if you use Horizon as which is a package for monitoring your queued jobs and those sorts of things, you can see any of your batches that are being done. So you can batch a bunch of jobs together, and then you can check the status of that batch and see how far it is as far as its completion and whatnot. So Kevin Ulott, is that right? Ulott contributed job chaining within batches. So now you can add chaining by passing a subarray of job classes, like if you had bus a batch and then you'd say new test. Why do I do this? Why do I always do this to myself? I don't know why I do this to myself. This code isn't going to make sense if I try and read it to you. In any case, you can use job chaining within batches now. So you can dispatch a job, and once that job completes successfully, you can then pass a second as the next argument, essentially, like, or all within the same argument. What is it? Like, it's a nested array, right? So you have like a top level job and then a nested array underneath that, which is a list of jobs that will only run if that one completes, and those ones will all run together. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. In any case, if that's something you're interested in, I'm raising my hand. I am. You should definitely check that out in the show notes. There's also this add is method to model relationships. So Sebastian Nicolau contributed the is and is not methods to Eloquent Relations without an extra query. So you can say author is user or author is not user. And what that would have done previous to this pull request is it would have used an extra query to fetch that user model from the author relationship. And now it will do it without that. So that's excellent. Saves a little query there. The only thing you have to add is a little set of params to make that post author relationship there. You actually have to use the parents to actually call the method.
You're running
not
a
to use
query,
the magic.
correct? Rather than
right.
So I think the crux of this one is if the author relationship wasn't loaded, obviously Laravel would lazy load it for you and then compare the IDs of the two models. Whereas now, if you call it on the query builder, so author with the parentheses to get the underlying query builder instance, and then pass it is, it will do a comparison in the database. So it would run the query for you directly. So if you don't care what the value is, and you don't need to retrieve it and use it, then you can use this on the query builder, which is a more efficient way of going about it.
Nice. We also have this upsert to Eloquent and Query Builder. So Paras Malhotra contributed upserting records. This is used to bulk insert records and also to update those with duplicate keys. So the primary key being the same, it will duplicate, it will update those that have the keys that are specified there in your list of arguments. So the first argument is the data to be inserted or updated. And then the second argument is the column that uniquely identifies a given record. So you can use this with the database class, or you can use it directly with the model as well. And you actually will call the method upsert. Again, there is a example in the blog post here, but this looks really cool. I feel like I've written like this method myself before, right? I feel like this is something that I've had to do because it hasn't been in the core previously, but I feel like I've done something like this. But now it's just,
we've had like update or create,
right?
Which would, it would query the data, see if it's there, and then update it if it had to. Whereas this one, if you were to specify the unique constraint in your table or in your query, then it will say that this will delegate it to the database, so the database will actually handle that update or create. So if it detects a collision on that unique key, it will then update the record. Otherwise, it will insert a new record.
Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Nice job, Paris. Thank you. We also have a new line method for console IO. So Scott Carpenter contributed a new line method that you can use to output a blank line in your Artisan console output. So this might be something that you would do in a command that you would run if you wanted to output information to the command line while your job is running. And if you wanted to have like parsing CSV file and then a blank line and then another piece of information to kind of like break those pieces up, because sometimes if they run all together, it can be a little bit difficult to read. So you could do before, you could say this get output new line, which would allow you to kind of do that. But now you can just say this new line, and you can actually specify a number in there as well, which will insert a number of blank lines. So that'll be cool. It makes your output for your console stuff a little bit easier, which we all like. Love the easy. A can any method has been added for authorizable models. So Dennis Dulishi contributed a can any method to the authorizable trait that the user model currently supports. This allows the following, similar to the blade feature with the same name. So you can say user can any, and then you can pass a list of permissions that will check to see if they can perform any of those permissions or have access to any of those gates, I suppose, right? So that's nice if you're checking for, are they a admin or are they an editor or are they whatever, right? And you can check a list of things, and if they have permission to do any of those, can any, then it will return true for you. We've got mail message when and unless methods. So Kuba, oh my gosh, dude, Szymanowski.
Kuba Szymanowski.
Szymanowski. I think I've said this before. I used to have a buddy in high school whose name was Krzeski. Krzeszewski. It's Polish. It's a very Polish name.
You can spell it at least.
Yeah, and there was Nowacek. He was Polish as well, but I think so anyway. Anyway, this is a contributed new convenience method to the mail message class when you want to change the mail message conditionally. So this is interesting. So you'd say a new mail message, and then you can say when, and then you pass your conditional, and then it will allow you to basically have a closure that will be passed if it matches true, and then a closure that you will get if it is false, right? And this is sort of like the collection method when you say like is empty, and then you can pass a Boolean, and then you get two different like closures that you can use for like the first one is if it is empty, the second one is if it isn't. The same thing here. So you say when, and then if the first is the Boolean that you want to evaluate. The next thing is the closure that you get if it is true. Next one is the closure if you get if it's false. So this is handy for if you want to change the mail message that you're going to be using conditionally based on some Boolean. There's a lot of changes there for 8.10. You can see the full list of new features and the updates, of course, in the show notes, and we'll have all of that for you. Jam-packed. I mean, as the Laravel team gets bigger, these releases just keep getting bigger and better too. It's pretty awesome.
Not to mention all the extra community contributions that we're seeing as well.
We're seeing
a lot of stuff coming in from the community, and we're starting to see a lot of contributions, 2, 3, 4 contributions from individuals as well. So good work to everyone who's putting in the work to get some new functionality added to the framework. And on that
note,
I
don't know if it's I was gonna say, I don't know if it's just me. Taylor and the Laravel team are just like pouring gas on this thing, right? I mean, like it's just going faster. Like I find it getting almost like I'm thankful for this podcast, honestly, because it helps me stay up.
Yeah.
Like if I didn't have this, it would be difficult, like just to keep up with things. Like everything's moving so quickly now. It's literally you have to be on every day to know what's going on.
There's definitely a lot of stuff going on, especially with Dries and Nuno and Mohammed and James and there is someone who started recently. I think it's Chronobone. I think Chronobone is their name. So yeah, there's definitely
I don't know Chronobone. He's a long time Laravel member. I remember back talking with him in like IRC chat, like back in way back. He was telling me.
Yeah, so definitely, and having everyone having their own piece to work on certainly makes it easier that rather than Taylor having to focus on all of the things, Taylor can focus on the new and exciting stuff. He's working on Jetstream at the moment. He still oversees all of the PRs, but then you've got Mohammed working on Spark, and you've got James working on Forge, and you've got Dries managing all the open source things, and Nuno's in on Vapor, and then I think I'm going to call him Chronobone until I find his actual name.
Yeah,
has been brought on to work entirely on Nova, so helping out our friend Hemphill there. It's good to see that dedication to all of those different bits and pieces from within the team there. But yeah, speaking of all the releases and things like that, Laravel 8.11 was also released, bringing in some new job middleware, preserving eloquent collection types when calling fresh, and latest features, fixes, and changes. So first up, from Paris Malhotra, contributed a new job middleware that allows you to prevent overlapping of jobs. An example use case of this is where you want to stop double refunding of orders or processing jobs that are, to basically avoid race conditions that two workers would pick up the same job, or a job would fail and get tried again, even though that job didn't necessarily fail. If you were relying on a third party, for example, and you had a timeout, but then you got a response. So if you were doing a refund in this example, and the HTTP request timed out for the refund, but the refund was still carried out on the remote party end, you wouldn't want to process that twice. So definitely check that out. There was some discussion on Twitter as well. Mohammed put a good blog post together talking about how you might do this kind of stuff in your application using atomic locks in Redis or things like that. So definitely check that out. I'll try and remember to put a link to that in the show notes. The other job middleware that Paris contributed was a rate limits jobs and rate limits jobs with Redis middleware in the queuing system. Uses the same rate limiter class that was introduced in Laravel 8. So you can do rate limit of 4, and you could say limit none or limit per hour by job, and then you could say, you can have 1 per hour for this user ID and things like that. And you can also reference the backup rate limiter in the job middleware definitions. So definitely check that out for a more comprehensive explanation of that. There'll be information in the Q middleware documentation, which we'll have links to in the show notes. Caleb Porzio contributed an update to preserve eloquent collection types after calling fresh. The pull request did come with an example to illustrate this, where essentially previously, if you had a user all and you were to call user fresh, it would return an instance of the Illuminate database Eloquent collection. Whereas if you were to then delete that user and call fresh again, you would get an instance of Illuminate support collection, so the underlying class. So this change in the framework essentially just makes sure that that is consistent between the fresh calls. So definitely check that out if you've run into that issue. I think I may have bumped into this. I thought it was a Livewireism when I was trying to call or rehydrate a collection in a Livewire component. So maybe if I update my version of the framework, that will stop happening. But
this is honestly, this is why it's so valuable to stay up to date with the most recent version of Laravel. I'm not saying like with every point release necessarily. I'm just saying like to be on Laravel 8, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where it's like you never know when a new feature is going to come up that you're like, oh my gosh, that solves the problem that I've been fighting with for the last however long. It happens all the time.
The only problem with that is that you might see it as expected behavior, and so you would work around it in a lot of cases. And this happens to me all the time, where I go, oh yeah, that's just how it works, and I don't stop and think that's not right, and then try and go and get it fixed. And the few times that I have tried to do that, I have found myself in a very big rabbit hole trying to fix things up. So the things that I think are simple are never as simple as they appear. So definitely staying up to date helps with these things. It may hinder you depending on if, as I said, you are relying on that quote broken behavior. So but that is all for 8.11. So check that out. We'll have links to everything in the show notes.
I was going to say these job middlewares for preventing overlapping jobs as well as rate limiting jobs. This is huge. This is exactly what we've had. Man, I know there's a couple of problems we've been fighting for like weeks, and it doesn't always cause an issue, but it's like one of those things that's weird to track down because it feels like we're getting jobs triggered multiple times. And it's like, I think you've actually had something like this on your side before too, right? And it can be so freaking difficult to track those down. Like it can be really hard. And so these rate limiting jobs are a godsend. Like I'm screenshotting this as you're talking about them and like, yes, sending this to my dev. Like, hey guy, this is what we need to do right here. Come look at this. So pretty cool.
It certainly helps you strip out some, because, we've built this kind of stuff into our other, our side project. So we can strip that out and just use the native Laravel stuff and not have to worry about, maintaining our own implementation of it, which the downside to having your own implementation is that it's not battle tested and used at scale like things in the framework are, which is why it's generally advisable to just use the things that are in the framework as much as possible.
Totally. Hey, before we switch over to news, why don't we talk about this course that we talked about earlier in the show? So, as we talked about, we love David Hemphill. We love his keyboard craziness, and we also love Nova, one of my favorite tools for Laravel for sure. And In-Depth Laravel is a new video course designed for Laravel artisans from beginning to advanced when working with Nova. So the course is filled with Laravel knowledge for you. It has 288 videos. It's got 28 chapters, 32 plus hours of content, as well as lifetime access. There's a special test-driven development module talking about how you can make sure that your components and all your custom stuff that you're putting into your Nova install are able to be tested really well. It's got Vue.js and Nuxt.js projects. It's got deployment using Forge and DigitalOcean, as well as helping out with acquaintance with Livewire. So this is all ready for you. You can get it right now with a 20% off using a coupon code LN-IDL20. That's Laravel News In-Depth Laravel Course 20, LN-IDL20. So this is really cool. This is actually, I remember talking to the creator about this one not too long ago. And Taylor is even talked about this in his own Twitter feed. Talked about Sathark putting a lot of effort into teaching others about Laravel, and the fact that he's just been a valued part of the community. And I don't think, for anybody watching this live, I think I am confusing two sponsors.
I think you might be.
Is that true? I think I am, because I'm talking about a sponsor that is on the blog, but not the sponsor that I was thinking of. This is a sponsor for the blog, not the sponsor for the podcast. Is that right? Pretty sure it is.
Come on, Jake.
Hey, you know what? We just got too many sponsors around here. We've got too much love going on for the show. All right, folks who are watching live, all one of you, maybe two of you. We're gonna run that back here.
Andreas will forgive you, maybe.
You will. Sorry, Andreas Hubenthal, you're the man. Where the heck is this thing? There it is. There it is. Okay. All right, here we go. Let's try that again. Un momento, por favor.
Waiting.
Okay. All ready? Okay. So speaking of, before we move on to the news section, we talked about a little bit earlier having a sponsor for the show today, which is regarding a Nova course that has been released. So this is the very first premium Nova course. It is your ultimate course to demystify Laravel Nova from A to Z. This is coming from our friend Bruno Falco? Is it Falco? Falco? I don't know how to say with that A with a little squiggly over.
No, I'm not sure.
Bruno, you know who you are. Bruno, you're the man. You know who you are. This course has 51 videos. There's more than 5 hours of recording. It goes through everything from installation to advanced UI features creations. There is a new UI components chapter, which is in development, which actually goes through all the different ins and outs of how you can create your very own custom components within Laravel Nova. There is as well, one of my favorite parts, resource testing. So how can you get your tests into your Nova application? Well, Bruno shows you how to do that. So right now you can get it for up to 40% off. We will have a special link in the show notes. If you go check that out, you can get it for $96 right now. It's typically $160. You can get it for $96. It is endorsed by our wonderful friend and Nova co-creator, Mr. David Hemphill, and you should definitely check this out according to him. So definitely check out this awesome new course by Bruno Falco, your ultimate course for demystifying Laravel Nova. It is at masteringnova.com. Check it out. Thanks, Bruno.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Okay, moving on to news. Let me grab that real fast.
Composer
2
has now been released.
Hit us up, Michael.
With performance improvements. You know what? Composer for the last couple of months for myself and evidently a whole bunch of other people has just been randomly running into memory limits and timeouts and issues and things like that. And
absolutely,
I had some reservations about using the pre-release and the early access versions of Composer version 2. Just, with work is probably the most common, but I've also been away for 6 weeks on leave. So the last time I tried it, I had issues with Composer not behaving. However, today being yesterday at the time of this recording and a few days ago by the time this hits your e-holes for most of you, Composer version 2 was released with many changes and critically performance improvements. Quoting from the announcement blog post by Jordi Borgiano, we overhauled pretty much everything from the protocol used between Composer and packages.org to the dependency resolution, including downloading files in parallel using curl and constraint evaluation optimizations. This leads to massive improvements in terms of both speed and memory usage. The difference depends on your use case, so while I've seen reports of improvements of over 50% to both in some projects, I cannot put an exact number on it, but I'm sure you'll be positively surprised if you haven't tried Composer 2 yet. Can I just say, I don't know what an exact figure is, but it feels lightning fast. The dependency resolution is quicker. Awesome. Installing things is quicker. It's much more deterministic. If you tell Composer to Composer update a specific package, it doesn't go and resolve your entire dependency tree. It only resolves that package. Nice. So it flies. If I just want to update a specific package or I want to remove a specific package, I'm not sitting there waiting while Composer spins its wheels. And the parallelism is important as well. A lot of us that were using version 1, because Composer didn't do parallel deploys, had the Hirak Prestissimo package installed globally. The first thing you will notice after updating to Composer version 2 is that you'll get an error saying that doesn't work. So Composer Global Remove, Hirac / Prestissimo, and then go again, and this thing will fly. Like, it is much quicker. Composer version 2's native parallelism is much quicker than what Hirac Prestissimo ever was. Not that that's a knock on Prestissimo, but it is a
Sure.
it's showing how much work the team has put into updating Composer. Eric Barnes, who wrote this post, updated his local Composer version to the beta last week and can confirm it feels much faster than V1, as I said, and definitely uses less memory. So hopefully when I start doing Composer updates against some of my bigger projects at work when I return tomorrow, I won't see any of these errors. If you're on Composer self-update from 1.x, it will warn you that a new stable major version of Composer is available, and you can update to version 2 by running Composer self-update --2. If you do run into any issues, it's pretty easy to go back. You can just Composer self-update --1, and it'll drop you back to the previous version. So definitely check that out if you're using Composer. As of now, Composer version 1 is effectively end of life. So if you're still using that, don't expect support, don't expect updates.
Yeah.
There's really, unless you're using loads of plugins for version 1, then there's no reason, I think. And as a PSA, I would say get onto version 2 now. All of those Composer memory limit issues that we've, heaps of us have been bumping into for the last couple of months, just stop.
Yeah, for sure.
And just the way that the whole thing works is so much quicker, so much more powerful. And kudos to Nils and to Geordie and to anyone else that worked on the Composer project and Packagist and all of that. You've done a tremendous job, and we thank you. Obviously, the PHP ecosystem wouldn't be today what it is without the work that you put into Composer.
No joke, man.
Anyone that is able, Composer is sponsorable on GitHub sponsors, so we'll have links to that in the show notes as well. Definitely support them in the work that they're doing, because they're doing some fantastic work for us all.
It's so true, man. When they sort of standardized that we were all going to be using Composer, and I know when Taylor kind of jumped on that bandwagon instead of using Sparks, which was from CodeIgniter, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think originally Laravel was like a dependency injection container. Essentially, that was kind of like its origin, right? And I think it was originally like a Spark that you would install into CodeIgniter. And I know that I think CodeIgniter at one point decided like, hey, we're going to go Composer. And I know Taylor also, like when Laravel was in version 3, I think,
version 4
kind of had its own package.
First, yeah, version 3 had its own packaging system. Version 4 was sort of when we hit the mainstream with PSR 0 and then later PSR 4, and that really helped us to standardize the packaging approach. And Composer came out of, I'm 99% sure it came out of the Symfony ecosystem, so it was built there, and it's given PHP a new lease on life, and it's just
really has.
It is a phenomenal piece of tooling for managing project dependencies. So, and if you're not using it, definitely check out getcomposer.org for some instructional information on why that's powerful. But at a high level, it helps you package up PHP code that you can then ship between different applications. So if you're an agency, for example, and you write some piece of functionality that you think would be useful in multiple projects rather than the old copy paste between projects that we used to do, create a package, fling it up on Packagist or privately host it on GitHub or whatever, and then you can just pull it into your other projects anytime you need to. And now with Composer 2, if you ever need to update that individual package, you can do it so much quicker. So yeah,
even like if you're using a vanilla PHP, even if you're using a vanilla PHP install, like if you're not using any sort of framework or something, the really nice thing about Composer is it's so easy to pull in, really. It's very, very simple to get started with using it in your project. So I love that about it too. You don't have to be using Laravel or Symfony or anything fancy. Like you can use Composer in any PHP project very, very simply. So they've done an excellent job with that. Thank you so much for the work on that, folks. Appreciate it. Hey, speaking of Composer, this is your reminder to update your Laravel installer. So at the end of this month, the old Laravel installer will stop working. It's not going to be like, it's not deprecated. It's just not working. It will not work anymore, as the old installer servers will be taken offline. So this is from Laravel PHP on Twitter. Reminder, we will be shutting down the old Laravel installer servers at the end of the month. Please make sure your Laravel installer package that is globally installed on your machine is at version 4.0 or greater. And how do you install it, you might ask? You install it using, wait for it, Composer. So See what version you have installed. Go ahead and run Laravel-V in your console. If it's less than 4.0, you'll need to update. There's a tutorial on doing it, but typically all this requires is that you run composer global require Laravel/installer : that arrow symbol there greater
Carrot.
than, right?
Carrot.
4.0. Thank you. Caret. Thank you. I always forget what that's called. I never remember. I always want to say tilde, and I'm like, no, it's not tilde.
Yep.
It's caret.
That's why you're a math teacher, not an English teacher.
That's correct. Yeah, it's like a power symbol, like in like mathematic notation, I think so. Anyway, there you have it, folks. That's your reminder for your Laravel installer. Talk to us about schedule work, my friend.
Schedule work.
Or you know what?
Say?
What the
Let's
heck?
not.
What am I talking about?
Let's not talk about schedule work from previous episodes.
You know what?
Let's talk about.
Here's what we shouldn't talk about: the Laravel schedule work command, Valley Light, and YouTube Q&A. We shouldn't talk about that.
No, because that was the previous podcast episode. No, that was the previous podcast episode.
Yep, and I just threw it in my notes. Hey, earlier you were talking about Taylor, by the way, and I had a little dig I was going to say. Not dig, really, but just kind of a funny comment. You were like, yeah, now that all the other guys are working on Laravel, Taylor has time too. And I was going to say, do snare drums.
Yeah.
Right? Have you noticed that?
He was, I guess, in the marching band in high school. And his looks like he keeps at it because I do not have, I can't drum as well as I used to anymore.
He was one of the cool band geeks in high school, probably, right? I mean, like the snare guys, I always wanted to be a snare drummer. My cousin was a snare drummer on the drum line, whatever. I was like, oh, that'd be so cool. I never did it, but that's admirable for sure. So he's getting some time in on it. It's been pretty fun to watch.
Indeed.
Okay, on to packages, my friend. On to packages.
Let us talk about automatically providing an online version of your Laravel mailables. Wagon Wheel is a package by Sam Carr that provides an online version of your Laravel emails to your users. It uses Laravel's built-in signed URLs to create a URL for the online version, which is secured and makes it difficult to guess the URL. It works by adding the safer online viewing trait in any of your mailables, and then essentially, that is it. Just use the trait. At the time of writing, you can customize the placement of the component in the email and message expiry time that determines how long Wagon Wheel should keep the online version. You can also publicize the package's views if you need to customize the look and feel. So by default, this will just put a little bar at the top of your mailable saying can't view this email. View it in the browser. That's it. That is the package. That is all.
Yeah. If you've seen that before, which I'm sure most of you have, if you've ever gotten like a mail from MailChimp or something like that, you'll get that little thing like, can't view this in your email client, view it in the browser or something like that, right? Maybe if you've got some fun GIFs or whatever that you've put in your email, you could see them on your browser instead of through your email client. So that's pretty cool. Okay, we're going to speed up here. We got a couple of things we've got to run through. So let's do this. All right. So Enlighten your APIs with auto-generated documentation. So Enlighten is a package by Duilio Palacios and Jeff Ocha that automatically documents your Laravel APIs. So there's no need to add endless doc blocks to each API method, maintain dozens of README files, or write extensive wikis to keep your APIs documented and in sync with your code base. Instead, use Enlighten. This is will use your Laravel applications with a beautifully documented, generated automatically from your test suite. By doing so, your documentation is always up to date with the current version of your app, which is much appreciated. So provides a really clean dashboard. You can take a look at that in the blog post. With helpful documentation about the requests, including session data, inputs, headers, response preview, et cetera, et cetera. Under the hood, Enlighten uses a separate database to actually generate results after running your test suite. So it ensures your documentation is always up to date. Like I said, instead of having to rely on like comments or things like that. So you can learn more about the package, get full installation instructions, and view the source code on GitHub at stydenet/enlighten. Cool one. Awesome.
Yeah. Definitely keen to give that a spin and see how it works because it seems,
for sure. Me too.
Seems magical. Cool. Next up, we have managing job workflows with Venture. Venture is a package to help you build and manage complex asynchronous workflows in your Laravel applications. An example from the documentation illustrates a workflow defined with publishing a podcast. So you'd call the workflow facade, : new, and you would give the workflow a name, publish new podcast, and then you add a series of jobs to it. Add process podcast, add optimize podcast, add publish podcast on Transistor FM, and then say that it relies on process podcast and optimize podcast. So those two have to finish before you can publish the podcast. At the heart of the package is the workflow step trait that you will need to add to the jobs to use within a workflow. The trait enables Venture to track a job's dependencies and other dependent jobs. Another neat feature that is provided by this package is performing an action after a workflow has finished. So you can do add job and then chain on the then method, and that will receive, that has a callback as a function, as a parameter that receives a workflow passed into that, and it gets called once every job in the workflow has been finished and then gets past the workflow instance. So if this is something that you need to do in your applications, if you want to put together workflows, this would have been so useful to me when I was working at my last job, where we were doing this kind of publishing workflows for transcoding video files. It also helps to deal with failure in workflow, failed steps, and things like canceling the workflow. You can learn more about the package, get full installation instructions, and view the source code at github.com/ksasnovsky/venture. So I love the sound of this. I wish I had it 5 years ago.
Yeah, we actually have been using, oh my gosh, how can I not remember the name of this team? Jesse Shutt works for these guys. Be Nice, Do Good. What's the name of that? Do you remember? I can't remember the name of the company.
Me either. I'm drawing a blank here.
Oh my gosh, it's like right there. Anyway, they've got a simple workflow step sort of like this as well. They've got a really good blog post for it. We've been using it for the last couple months maybe, and it has changed. I mean, it looks very similar to this, and it has really been super helpful. Instead of like a single class with a bunch of methods that all kind of describe each one of these steps, you have these little tiny classes that are all really nice and testable, and you can just and it it's nothing that you probably couldn't do already with like a pipeline, but it's just a little bit nicer version of a pipeline. So anyway, looks good. So there we go. Livewire Charts. So Livewire Charts is a package by Andreas Santabanez, our good friend, for creating neat charts using Livewire in Laravel. So this got a lot of attention. I know that when he put it out there, it kind of blew up. So this is pretty cool. So Livewire Charts 1.0. So if you ever use Apex Charts, which I think I have used before, this kind of wraps up Laravel Livewire plus Alpine.js plus Apex Charts to make it really simple to add these charts to your project with your tall stack. So he's got a repo out there with some demos and examples. But I know Caleb seemed really keen on this as well, seemed really excited about it. There's some examples in the blog post here we have for how simple it is to add these. So you can say new column chart model, and this is all in PHP, of course, and then set title, add column, right? You can add the, it has just, some little, it's a really beautiful API. What would you have for the column like header and then the value and then the colors. So it seems really simple, really customizable, and very easy to use. So nice job on that, Andreas. Way to go. And check that out if you're looking for adding charts to your tall stack project.
Absolutely. I certainly will be doing that because I will be adding charts to my tall stack project.
Yep, absolutely. Same.
Next up, the ability to generate and extract random data with a package called RandoPHP by Roberto Butti. Implements random generators for integers, characters, bytes, etc., and takes random samples from arrays. The package can be broken down into two distinct types of operations, generating things and drawing things from existing arrays. RandoPHP provides a fluent interface to generate integers, dates, floats, and so on and so forth to help you generate data. Secondly, you can draw random stuff from existing arrays using the draw class. So if you were to have a collection of things that you wanted to draw some random data from, you could pass that in there. The examples in the article were taken from the project's README, which has full details on usage, which you can view source code for on GitHub. We will have links to all of that in the show notes.
I'm looking at this because as you're reading this, I know I read this earlier this week, but I'm trying to figure out. I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing. Where would we use this, Michael? Where would I end up using this?
If you wanted to take some samples from existing arrays, if you needed to generate some random numbers or random sequences, I think it's hard to say, right? I would suggest, and Roberto can take it or leave it, I would put something in here about why you would use this package over something like Faker. I'm not saying
that's what I'm wondering.
I'm not saying don't use this package over Faker. I'm suggesting that it would be good to kind of draw the line there and figure out why one is better than the other.
Yeah, it looks like looks there are some different things that it can do, right? Like these sequences that it's talking about are interesting, right? And then you could also, in this case, can say, hey, go ahead and allow duplicates in this list that I'm generating, this random sequence that I'm doing. So there are some differences here, but I think you're right. Like I think it would be helpful to know, hey, here's what Faker does, and here's why this is different and when you might use it. Because it's not too often that I end up needing random data in my actual production application.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of times in tests, but yeah, what is the difference and when would I use one over the other? Okay.
It's definitely the first question I had, and it's, I'm sure, a question that everyone else will have. So take it or leave it. But that would be something good to put into the README.
Absolutely. Hey, there is a really cool package that we have out here that has been created with Laravel 0. Shout out Nuno Maduro. So it's called Laravel Packer, and it's a command line tool by Sarthak Shrivastava. There you go. Sorry, Sarthak. For speeding up your package creation. So you can use all your artisan commands while you create a Laravel package. I don't know if you've ever been in this spot where you're like, oh, how am I going to do this package again? Like, I'm going to go copy Spassy skeleton for a package again, right? We've all been there. But you can use all the artisan commands while you create a Laravel package for this and create CRUD for new models that you create in your packages, such as like controllers and models. To create a new package that you can then use Packer, so it's just PACKR is the name of it, Packer, and then you can name the package, give it your vendor, the author, your author email. You just start with that, and it creates all the composer.json stuff for you. And then as you develop your package, of course, you can use all the things that you would normally use straight in your Laravel app, such as make controller, make model, etc., etc. It's built on Laravel 0, and you can find detailed tutorials about all this on a YouTube playlist, which will be published along with the blog post. So check that out. Like I said, I've definitely been in this boat before where I'm like, oh man, how do I start a package? I always feel like when I get to it, it's like I don't do it often enough that I have a really great workflow for it.
Yeah.
But to have a tool like this where I can just like, oh, I'll just download that tool and it'll handle it all for me. Really, really nice. That's awesome. Okay. Hey, you know what? Honestly, I think that's actually all we got today.
It's all of the things.
I think that's all of it. Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, thanks so much for tuning in, folks. Thank you again also to our Mastering Nova course, which was sponsoring the show today. Bruno, big shout out. Go to masteringnova.com to check that out and get your 40% off. Thanks again for listening to the show, episode 130. If you like the show, we would really appreciate it if you'd rate it up in your podcatcher choice. 5 stars would be much appreciated. If you have questions for us, feel free to reach out on Twitter at Michael Dorinda, at Jacob Bennett, or at Laravel News. And there's typically one other thing I say, but I can't remember what it is. What is it? Oh, show notes. Show notes for this episode can be found at podcast.laravel-news/130. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye all.